All right, so let's take a look at another quick tutorial on loop control. So we're going to take a look at three loops, maybe four. Now I'm kind of jumping over variables because I feel like variables are going to get explained enough as we kind of move forward and you see us start to solve actual programming questions you'd have on an exam. So I'm going to start with something called an enhanced for loop, which you'll see a lot in tutorials, and then we'll go back to the standard, quote unquote, standard for loop. And the reason I'm going with an enhanced for loop first is, as I mentioned, it's sort of the one that you'll see a lot. Now, for this um, enhanced for loop, what you want to do is you want to think about looping as a way of repeating a block of code a certain number of times. So if you want something to print a bunch of times or whatever. Another thing we're going to do is create something called an array. And I like to jump right into some of these data structures early on because most of the programming questions you're going to have when you go into job interviews relate to data structures. And really all a data structure is a structure, right? Think of a building or a box or something, and it's a way of sorting things within that box. For us, it's data of different types. So a type essentially is like an integer. If you're working in games, it's a game object, things like that. So let's make a quick integer. We're just going to call this numbers, and this equals, put a couple curly braces here, 1, comma, well, let's do it this way. Let's do 0, comma 1, comma 2, comma 3. Now, if we're going to loop through these numbers, the thing that we have to understand is there's actually 4 elements in here. There's a 0. This counts as 1 element, 2 elements, 3 elements, 4 elements. And let's go ahead and sort through this. So the enhanced for loop, so I'm going to drop a comment on that, enhanced for loop, looks something like this. So I'm going to type 4, and you can see there's a for each here, there's a for I. So if we select this for I, this is our standard for loop that you would find. If I go to the for each, this is our enhanced for loop. So what it's saying by calling it by saying for each, it's saying for every integer, which is a whole number, I, we're going to store inside of I um, whatever is inside of numbers, which is 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's take a look at how we can test this. And that's why it was important. Everybody starts off with this hello world, or for us, hamburger example. So for example, if I type in hamburger, or I can just do, well, let's start off this way and then we'll concatenate it together. So I'm going to type I here. And let's just hit F5 and run that and see what happens. Okay, so what's going on here? Bring this down just a little bit. Notice in our output, we have 0, 1, 2, 3 here. What we're printing out is I, though. We're not printing out numbers. So the way to think about that is we're saying for every element inside of numbers, and what are the elements? It's the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to store these inside of I. And as we're looping to the end of this, so this is an array that runs from the start to beginning, right? So this for loop, what it does, it looks through every element in our array from 0 to 3. So if this was an inventory system and you had apples and arrows and all this other stuff, it would sort through. And then this is like a way where we would see what's in our inventory system here. For us, our inventory system is only holding numbers. So we're spitting out 0, 1, 2, 3 to the screen. Now, say we want to go with a different data type of strings, right? And in here, notice I'm getting an error, right? For one, this should be a capital. And the other stuff inside of here is a string is just a bunch of characters. So I'm gonna, let's go here, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this a couple more times. And then we'll do ASD, ABC, CD, and then just Alex. Now this is print line, so it prints a line and it spaces it out. There's also just print, and the problem with using this one, and it's our numbers here, and we're getting an error here because we want to make I of type string. So now when we print this out, if we do just a print versus a print line, you'll see it all runs together across here. Let's run our program. And let's go down a little bit here. And I'm actually going to shrink my interface just a little bit so we can see that. So you can see here, it put it all as one significant chunk. If we had the print line in here and we ran this, you could see it spaced it out. It printed each element and then it went to the new line. So let's take a look at our standard for loop. So that's sort of our for each loop. I'm going to expand this just a little bit. So I'm going to duplicate or just grab this line and drop it down here, and I'm going to delete this out. And I'm going to just type for, and let's go with our for I. Now what this is saying is for j is a variable, equals 0. As long as j is less than numbers, which is this array, the length of this array. Now something you need to understand is each element in this array has an index point. So let's take a look at that really quick. So if I copy this, and I'm going to just paste it up here for a second, and I want to see on the screen the first element in this array. So the way you access that is I paste numbers bracket 0. So the index of this array, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So now what I can do is when I run this, it should print just ASD on the screen. So notice it printed ASD. Well, let's say we want to access ABC. So if I paste this here, and let's run that. Now you can see I have ASD and ABC. Well, what's powerful about this for loop and the for each loop from before is what I can do is um, the way is like as you had seen from the for each loop is we were able to print everything in this array through just running it through. Well, another way of doing this is just grabbing our print statement here and then copying this j, which starts at 0. And this gives us a little bit more control than our other one, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So notice j starts at 0, and as long as j is less than the numbers.length, we're going to add 1 to j. So let's see how that works too. So I'm just going to print out what's the current value of that integer j just by putting j here. And what I'll do here is I'll do plus, and then I'll do a string, and just put a space there. So that's going to space out these two, and I'm going to get rid of that print. And now when we run this, you'll be able to see the index. Let's go ahead and write that out too. So let's do that plus index of array. Now when we run this, let's see what happens. We have index of array. I should space that out. Let's do that one more time so it looks cleaner. Index of array 0, right? Because it starts at 0. That's this. We get system.printout j. So what's stored at index 0 in j? ASD. And so we get 0, 1, 2, 3, and it prints out, this is at 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right, let's take a look at another type of loop. So I'm just going to gut all of this, but actually I want to keep that print statement, super useful. All right, let's take a look at creating while loops. So I'm going to just sort of clear this out so we have our cleaned up print statement. So the structure of a while loop looks something like this. So while some condition is active, we're going to do something. So let's make a variable in here, and let's take our print statement and just drop it inside of our while loop. So I'll say while integer x is equal to, I don't know, 30. So this is our integer. It's just currently holding the value of 30. So while x is less than 50 here, we want to print this out to the screen. Now the problem here is x is currently less than 50, right? So this is going to print forever because x is always less than 50, right? Because it's 30. So what you should do is maybe increment x like we did last time. So this would be every time this runs, it'll increment it by 1. So this would become 31, 32. So let's go ahead and see what that does. So I'm going to hit x in here, and I'm actually just going to do a print statement, and I'm going to do plus just so we can see it all in one line, or a space. And let's see what that does. So I'm going to run that. And you can see here that it starts off at 30 and then it adds its way up to 50 and then it ends or terminates the program here. All right, so we'll take a look at switch statements next, or branching.